Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to episode 16 of Rednecks Rising, the anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-capitalist Appalachian podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea, a community organizer rooted and raised in the Great Smoky Mountains of Western North Carolina. And each week, we get together for good times fueled by my ADHD. We bust the myths about our region's history in between conversations where we sit down to talk with badass Appalachian hellraisers from up and down the mountain range. Which is exactly what we'll be doing in today's episode, where we chat with Joey, our new friend from Virginia, who tells us a thing or two about food justice before running off to dinner with Ma and Pa. Joey shares a little bit about how he felt called to return to his culture and his roots in Appalachia, and the vision he's holding now for building transformative, regenerative, sustainable models of food justice. That's a fancy way of me saying food systems that are smart and effective at doing what they are meant to do, keeping our communities fed, getting rid of all that extra waste, making sure our farmers are taken care of, and that folks who want to grow their own food to any degree have the tools and the knowledge to do just that. This wouldn't be an episode of Rednecks Rising if we didn't bond with our guest over how ineffective, wasteful, and traumatizing capitalism is in every way. And Joey brings up the idea of radical self-reliance. Not self-reliance as individuals, but as communities, as collectives. An idea that involves surrendering the land to the ecosystem and indigenous communities that it rightfully belongs to, growing food in places you wouldn't normally think to grow them, and using materials you wouldn't normally think to use for that reason. Guerrilla farming in urban areas, and altogether growing, harvesting, foraging, and sharing food fresh from the earth as an act of revolution. But before we get into all of that, we have a lot of housekeeping business to take care of, since it has been 2 whole weeks since one of our normal episodes, which is a great way to segue into our first bit of housekeeping. So in case you missed it, Episode 15 was a deep dive into the life story and legacy of Mother Jones that I did as a guest on the Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. It originally aired on their channel, and I just cross-posted that episode onto our channel as of yesterday. So you will now be able to find it wherever you are currently listening to this episode if you haven't already listened to it on .prol's page. Super, super grateful to those amazing podcasters over at .prol. Thank you, Kai and Mark and Nelson, for having me on your show and giving me a chance to let my ADHD run buck wild on somebody else's platform for a change. And speaking of guests and platforms, that brings me to point number 2 on our agenda for the business items for today. I would like to be really intentional about this platform lifting up voices that are not homogenous when it comes to the folks that we interview in our episodes. And so I would really appreciate y'all's help. I'm putting a call to action out there. I need y'all's help in leveraging this platform to intentionally amplify more voices of Black and Indigenous and Latinx and other Appalachians of color and Appalachians who might hold other underrepresented identities. So if you know someone who would make a good guest on the show, including yourself, for any reason, you don't need an excuse, please connect with me on our social media or via email at rednecksrising@gmail.com. I would love to set up a time to talk and have y'all on the show. That's kind of part of the whole point of this thing. And for the next point of order, I am super excited to make another big announcement. A few of our comrades out there who support the show and follow us on social media were asking about meeting up to talk and learn about community organizing and things that they could do in their own communities. And I've previously been offering one-off meetings as an independent kind of consultant deal for a set fee that I have waived in the past for folks who are BIPOC, queer, or poor, low income, or disabled. But 1 hour in a one-off meeting just isn't really an effective way to either build community or teach the skills and concepts that have been so fundamentally helpful for my own community organizing experience. So I am excited to announce Drum roll, please. Rednecks Go Rogue, our first ever pilot edition of a virtual learning community that is dedicated to community organizing. In launching this project, I'm juggling multiple truths. The first truth is that this is a pilot project. I have done a ton of trainings, both virtual and in person, on all of the concepts that are going to be covered in the program, but I've never organized a multi-week long curriculum virtually in this way before, and it's definitely going to require some growing and probably making mistakes on my part. And at the same time, the second truth is that I consider myself poor or working class, and I work full-time as a community organizer in order to provide for my family, including my kiddo. And because of this, I just can't afford to take time away from my current job or my family without recognizing the real cost and value of the time being taken. So, with that in mind, I am opening this program for participation to community members on a pay-what-you-can basis in exchange for a live program that's going to run from the first Thursday in October, that's October 6th, to the first Thursday in December. And during the live program period, live workshops are going to take place every Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30 Eastern Time, that's PM, in our shared Discord channel. And the live workshops are going to involve me visually presenting materials via video in the channel, and members who will have access to participate in the discussion in real time via text, voice, audio, or video chat. And there's going to be about 10 or 11 live workshop sessions over the course of this time frame. And since I know that's not going to work for everybody's schedule, members who can't join us for the live workshops are going to have access to recordings of those workshops to watch at their convenience via course materials that are going to be uploaded to this platform called Teachable. And so these recordings will be available to all members, regardless of whether or not they participate in the live workshop. So if you come to the workshop live and then you want to refer back to the content later, you can always view the recording. And then members will also be able to access additional supplemental materials via that Teachable platform. Things like PDFs of readings, other videos, activities, worksheets, other things to support the application of learning into praxis in our own communities. And that Discord community will be accessible for the entire duration of the program for asynchronous discussion around the content and materials of the course at a pace that's best suited and self-determined for each individual, and it will never be revoked. So as long as there's no ongoing violations of any community agreements in that space, members will be able to connect with the network that we build and the thoughts that we are shared in that space for the rest of virtual eternity. And finally, members of the learning community will have access to a organizing coaching session with me to brainstorm on any strategic planning, problem solving, or whatever else you want to jam on. And that'll be a one-on-one organizing coaching session. And in case you're wondering what kind of things we will cover in a learning community dedicated to community organizing, well, I imagine we'll talk about things like community organizing itself to start with. We'll probably go over what it is, some historical examples, some modern examples. We'll talk about what an organizer is and what they do. And then we'll learn some of the fundamental concepts to organizing, like power, strategic campaigning, self-interest, one-on-ones. We'll talk about skills like motivational interviewing and strategic questioning, compassionate curiosity, deep canvassing, and other things, storytelling, public narrative, spectrum of allies, and power mapping, and of course, building relationships and teams, because that's fundamental to community organizing. And the first course will be open to about 30 folks all in all, and there's roughly 18 spots left as of the time of recording this. If you're already a monthly supporter of the podcast and you want to be a part of that learning community, just holler at me on social media or hit us up via email. It's rednecksrising@gmail.com. No funky characters, no spaces, all one word, just like it's spelled in the podcast title. rednecksrising@gmail.com. And just let me know, and I'll add you as one of the included perks of your ongoing support. And for the rest of folks out there, if you want access to that community, you can find it via our Ko-Fi shop, along with the rest of our goodies and all the other ways that you can support us by becoming a monthly supporter of the show, for example, throwing a one-time tip our way for making the show so awesome, buying some of our merch, or buying membership to the learning community, and follow us for other ways to support us in the future. Ko-Fi is kind of like a Patreon if you're not familiar, and you can find it on our link tree along with all of our other social media pages and other ways to support us. And I will put the link tree in the show notes. You can also go straight to ko-fi.com/Rednecks Rising. And speaking of Ko-Fi, we have some new supporters who have made their way over to our Ko-Fi page since the last time that we talked, for any one of the things that I just mentioned. And that means that it is time to shout out some of our amazing new members of the Rednecks Rising crew. Welcome to the community, y'all. Really happy to have you on board. Unsweetened, Octavia, Howdy, Selena, Adam. We got Dan the History Man. If y'all are on TikTok, make sure to go find Dan, give his content a follow. He's on his way to becoming a history teacher. And if I had had a history teacher as fun as Dan, I would have retained a lot more information when I was young. We've got Kim, Abby, Amanda, Sharon, Phil, Kelly, and Matt. I hope you enjoy your new hats out in the wild. Please send me some pics to feature on our social media if you're open to that. And speaking of hats, you can get one of our sweet new hats for yourself by heading over to that same Ko-Fi page, and you can always buy one straight up like our other comrades did. Or you also can enter our giveaway because time has not run out yet to participate in that. You can collect points, aka like raffle tickets for the giveaway, however you want to think about it, in one of four ways. Number one, you can subscribe to the pod, send me the screenshot on Instagram or via email. You can, number two, rate the pod. So this would be a separate raffle ticket, separate point. Rate the podcast, screenshot it, send it to me. Number three, follow us on Ko-Fi. That is free. Number four, find the original giveaway post on our Instagram. It's not too far back. It's like 3 or 4 posts back. And tag as many friends as you want in the comments of that post. You'll get 1 point for every tag. I'll count all of the points from the entries that are submitted until Sunday, September 25th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The winner of the giveaway will be announced on social media on Monday, September 26th, and will also be announced on next week's episode, which will drop on Tuesday, the 27th, if social media is not your jam. Ooh, all right. That was a lot of housekeeping business, and I am sick of talking. So let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. But before we jump in, you know that we can't just skip past the trivia question of the day.
Hey, Chelsea.
Hey, Chris.
So for this week, question is, which famous person from history established the original route through the Cumberland Gap?
I think I know this one, but I also could be wrong. So I guess we will have to stick around to the end of the episode and find out. All right, y'all, that brings us to the top of the episode. Let's dive in with Jimmy. I guess a great place to start would be for you to tell us a little bit about who you are and your relationship to Appalachia. I had a friend on, I just interviewed a friend, the episode hasn't dropped yet, but he's from the Deep South, and I made him justify being on the show. So if there's any justification needed, then now would also be the time to offer that.
Well, I think my bona fides are good.
Cool.
Because I was not born in Appalachia. I was born in Richmond. To my mom and my dad, who are from Roanoke, Virginia. Kicked around with my dad for a little while when I was a kid working for Virginia, North Carolina Power Company. And then around the 6th grade, moved back to Roanoke, where all of my family is. And deep ties to the region. Like my all sides of the family are from like Harrisonburg and Roanoke and Bristol, and a few other places just up and down the Shenandoah Valley, which is like, I guess, considered kind of the gateway region to the mountains as a whole. And so that's like my ties. And so I've spent, pretty much every summer as a little kid, here in Roanoke or deeper in the mountains, going up into, West Virginia to, I don't know, go skiing with my aunt and uncle, or to, just, I guess be a tourist. But I am cut this out. Start from the top. Yeah, I'm from Roanoke, and I moved around a little bit as a kid, but I kind of settled back in throughout adolescence, and went to college in Radford.
Okay.
And moved away for a little while, and then moved back. So I'm kind of trying to kind of reconnect with my roots, and like rediscover a lot of my cultural heritage, and some of the stuff that I might have missed out on being away.
Yeah, I love that. So you returned to Virginia, or are you in a
Yeah,
different
I'm
part of
back in Roanoke now.
Cool. Very cool. And what does returning to your culture and your roots like look like for you?
Um, I think, as a kid, I was like aware of like the spirit of and like cultural resistance, in the region. Like, being from here, I actually did learn about stuff like the Battle of Blair Mountain, and like the cultural diaspora, and like kind of a lot of that stuff in school, as well as like having teachers who were like a little bit less about the status quo, so kind of spoke the truth about like what we as a country did to the indigenous people that were here when white people got here, and everything. But I never really connected the dots until I moved away, and I was living in Denver, and I started to really like move left and radicalize against capitalism.
You
And
left for the Rockies, you mountainous traitor. How could you? No, I'm just kidding.
honestly, it's just different mountains, and
I
I
know,
actually noticed
yeah.
a lot of parallels.
Oh, definitely.
Um, so so yeah, I did come back. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Well, of course you did. How could you not? I mean, no, I'm just giving you hell. And I think I've only been out there a couple of times, but they are so beautiful in their own way. I just don't connect with them nearly the same as much as I connect with the mountains out here. There's just something I think about, especially like the ecosystem out here in particular, that's like so lush and green, and like even the
Yeah.
air, you smell it like in the air, the difference. And yeah.
Yeah, it's majestic out there, but in terms of connections to the land, I've definitely felt that more like here than anything. Like I'm sitting in my car, but I'm at a park near my place, just because it's a good place for me to get a little privacy and some quiet. And sometimes there's a gazebo I can go to, but there's like a birthday party over there right now.
Oh
And
no, I hate that. when you're going to your special spot and then it's like, oh, someone's there.
well, it's a pretty popular
Is it?
spot for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like that's kind of when I say I want to reconnect, like I want to kind of apply the things that I learned and the perspectives that I gained, living first in Denver, and then I went even further west and lived out in Oakland, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area for about 3 years, something like that, and then that's where I moved back here from. I kind of want to like, bring some of the perspectives that I gained back uh, to here, and apply the Appalachian way of cultural resistance to them. And instead of, the other way, like I'm going to bring, Berkeley, California organizational tactics to West Virginia. Like, no, I'm not going to do that because that's not what works in Berkeley is not going to work in West Virginia. But it can be molded, and it can be kind of, like it can help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And in the meantime, I'm just, I'm working at a restaurant, and I am grateful to have the privilege of a supportive family, especially my parents who are letting me stay with them right now. And anybody that wants to crap on me for mom's basement can go eat a bag of dicks, because
man, we're living under late stage capitalism. Like, we are all doing the best we fucking can right now.
Absolutely right.
No judgment.
Absolutely right. And they're just jealous because they don't have a healthy relationship with their parents and can't move back into their mom's basement. So
honestly, I could never live with my parents. Like, I'm more
it's
power
hard.
to you.
It's hard.
I tried one time after college, and I was like, oh God, no, I can't do this.
Yeah, it has its challenges, but at the same time, I'm grateful for the money that I'm saving, and it kind of allows me the freedom to actually, like, dig in and do work that I wouldn't have either the time or the money to be able to afford to do if I was worried about rent. And frankly, that's, one of the fundamental reasons why we're separated from our family units. Like, the moment we turn 18 and go off to college, we're expected to move out and never go back, because now all of a sudden we're another set of rent,
exactly.
more,
yeah, the nuclear family and like the separation of like generational like family members is absolutely a like capitalist tactic, right? Like, to also isolate us more, right? Like, if we're paying into more rent, we pay into more childcare. If our grandparents, our children's grandparents rather aren't, like, if it's not normal for them to live in the house with us, like, there's just so many more layers to disconnect and like community erosion as a result of that too.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's the main thing that I actually came back to Roanoke to do, is to build community, both for myself, with me and my extended family, and then in areas that need it the most, like the restaurant industry that I've worked in my entire life, and like, parts of Roanoke with like low income communities with like community gardens and other ways to kind of fill in food deserts and address food justice, or like the work that I'm doing out in McDowell County, West Virginia, which is one of the hardest hit areas by both the opioid crisis and just like unemployment and the destruction of community fabric in general.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so curious. I feel like I start every interview episode with this. I'm like, I have so many questions already, because there's so much interesting stuff in what you just mentioned, even briefly. Like, first of all, with the restaurant industry, I'm curious what it looks like to build community there. We have like unions popping up like wildfire in Western North Carolina across like even the fast food industry, but also the restaurant industry. Dollar Generals are unionizing all throughout the region. So what does the restaurant community building look like for you?
As far as like the unionization aspect is concerned, it's been a little slow to pick up here in Roanoke, at least, but I have been noticing there's definitely chatter, and there's definitely a sentiment among people in the restaurant industry that shit's broken, and that something's got to give, especially with the server minimum wage in Virginia still being like $2 and change.
It is here too. I was gonna ask, and that's what I moonlight as a bartender, so I'm right there with y'all.
So that's an easy thing to organize around, and I think that right now we're in the part where like people are kind of starting to find each other.
Yeah.
And I think watching like the launch of the Restaurant Workers Union down in Texas with the 313 chain is kind of going to inspire people. And also, I'm kind of involved with that, but please don't put this part on the air because we need to maintain operational security.
Of course.
And yeah, it's just kind of encouraging to see like the beginnings of that, especially with like the Target in the New River Valley in Christiansburg near Virginia Tech is like has filed for a union election. And also one of the Starbucks here in Roanoke, the kind of the busy one that's right next to the big hospital, is also trying to unionize. So it's definitely starting. And in the meantime, because Roanoke is kind of like a weird little cultural bubble, and I would draw parallels between that and like Asheville, where you are. There's a little bit of like liberal-minded sentiment that kind of insulates against like the initial formation of like unionizing activity. But also at the same time, within that little cultural bubble, like all of the restaurant people here, it's like a weird little cultural incestuous community where everybody knows everybody and everybody dates everybody and everybody's worked for everybody.
Oh yeah.
And
like
all of the lifers are on a first name basis with each other. And if you walk in and you say like, yeah, I used to work at so and so, and they're like, oh yeah, F those guys, they're dicks. You start Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, the dive bar that I used to work at is no longer open, but the same people that I worked with there are the bartenders at the dive bar where I live now. Because it's like it's like just a drive over the mountain, and it's just like it's the same thing. It's like everybody, and then the girl who runs like the little neighborhood it's like a little apartment neighborhood that I live in. She used to work with my partner at the restaurant in our hometown. And like, that is just Appalachian life. Like,
yeah, it is. It definitely is. And so I think that like, working in the restaurant industry growing up in high school and college, that was like most of my jobs. I did a few other things, but, and it has been throughout my entire life working in the restaurant. I've worked in the restaurant industry. And so it's always been like kind of this weird, like crew of cast-offs and mercenaries and punks and rebels. So actually, I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been more organization in the restaurant industry to at least start off with. But I guess it's you could chalk a lot of that up to just kind of like the toxic individualism that permeates not only our society, but the industry in particular. So, it's an uphill battle, but also that's like, there's ways to organize, not just in terms of union organization, but also like, for example, trying to close the loop between like breweries and farm to table restaurants and the waste streams of those places, like capturing all that food waste and hops waste and byproducts and everything and sending them back to a compost facility that then goes back to the farm to table gardens and hop yards that feed back into the breweries. Like, that's what cities are supposed to do.
Yeah, it's like a very regenerative practice.
Yeah, exactly. And instead we've just turned cities into just big, giant steaming piles of rent seeking.
Ugh. Yeah.
And so like, and that kind of highlights the ways in which capitalism is artificial, and also the way it's a new system that's kind of a corruption of what we've always done as a society, which is organized in ways that make sense and ways that kind of efficiently allocate resources. So obviously, like we developed farms and animal husbandry and towns and cities because grouping together kind of makes it easier for us to share resources. And instead we're charging each other rent and not allowing people to grow gardens because of their homeowners association.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So this is like starting to take us into your food justice work a little bit and like how you feel about food justice and how it connects into all this. So tell us more about what's going on in McDowell County and even outside of that if you're doing other work.
So before the McDowell County stuff happened, I was kind of starting to like, I guess, poke at the outskirts of the Roanoke Regional Partnership, which is like it's a horizontal organization of activists and farmers markets and small organic farms and like poultry raisers and food kitchen like food pantry operators and just generally like a horizontal structure of people who kind of move within the Roanoke food systems in like a socially conscious way, and who seek to improve access to food and fight food insecurity and kind of everything associated with that. So there's bits about climate justice and bits about filling in food desert. And that's where like the composting operation that I was kind of alluding to fits in. And there's a couple of urban farms and some, let me pull up my notes here because I've got all of this written down and I have
That
managed to stay on track.
ADHD life, you gotta have those
No,
notes.
honey, I have been off the top of my head exactly on track for kind of what
You're
I've written
doing
down here.
great. Good job.
So, and then I remember that I have notes because ADHD.
Yes.
So Leap and the Roanoke Leap is kind of a subsidiary of that, but it's also like the organization that kind of it's the organizing organization. It doesn't run anything, but all of the people who do run their own independent projects are like members of Leap. Um, and it's a parallel organization that covers like the production, the processing, the distribution of food, urban farms, community gardens, compost like all sorts of workshops, a community kitchen, farmers markets, CSAs, education, volunteer work, everything. So it's actually a really powerful organization, and I'm super excited to be kind of getting into it. And the working group that I've recently joined is the one that actually does like the physical stuff. So the farms, the gardens, the compost, etc., the community gardens and whatnot. So like I'm still, like I said, I'm still poking around the edges of that. Um, but I'm probably going to wind up doing a workshop on how to repurpose shipping containers into pallets at some point, or shipping container pallets into containers at some point. Let me say that again.
Like raised
I'm
bed containers kind of deal.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a workshop at some point over the fall, hopefully, on how to turn shipping pallets into like patio containers or
Yeah.
raised bed retaining walls.
Yeah.
We're also going to be doing a workshop on like how to build mobile chicken tractors,
Ooh,
so people can keep
cool.
chickens in their little suburban yards. We're working on integrating the food pantry and volunteer production kitchen with people who are coming out of like the prison system and young people who need job training to actually go work in the restaurant industry.
Yes.
Um, and then like the products of this production kitchen then get either donated or sold to other places. And we're kind of hoping to integrate a community free fridge project with that soon. That's kind of my brainchild. I just spoke to one person about it, but they've kind of already had that on their radar anyway, so that might be a natural way for me to initially get involved. So that's the kind of stuff that like the food systems partnership does. And like so there's a lot of ways for me to get involved there, and this is pretty much exactly like the situations that I was looking for to kind of integrate ideas from some of the other phases of my life into this one.
Mm-hmm. I love just how comprehensive their model is at the what is it, food systems partnerships. Just how like we have some we have some pretty solid mutual aid networks here, but I would say they're nowhere near as organized or comprehensive. Like we have we have a group called the Gleaners that goes through and helps farmers glean what is not sellable produce and then take it to like local kind of community distribution folks who then
Huh.
distribute food from them and then like manna, and they also get food from all kinds of like local restaurants that are just like otherwise it would go to waste for whatever reason.
Do
And
you know about Appalachian Sustainable Development?
sounds familiar, but tell me about it.
They're out of Abingdon, up in like far southwest Virginia. So kind of near like Bristol, and
Mhm.
like that corner of like the Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina intersection. Um, and what they do is they act as an education platform, resource sharing facility. They also have a food pantry, and like processing facility. They've got an herb garden nursery, that distributes all over the region. They've got actually, I think they would be active where you guys are because they cover Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and
I'm
West
not too
Virginia.
far from Bristol. Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, well, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
well, the big thing that they do is they act as an aggregate for small farms. So they're basically like Cisco or PFG, but for small farmers to send in, their small crops to sell and make money. And since it's closer and it's like a tighter distribution network, and they have processing facilities on site, they can pay the farmers more and then also turn around and sell as a cheaper product. So that's kind of like, an inspiration for a lot of this, and then a lot of like what I'm kind of hoping to do out in MacDowell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry to cut you off if you had one more question.
No, 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 you're good. I was just thinking, yeah, I'm thinking about like kind of the network that is built out here and how I'm so inspired now because we've got like, in addition to kind of the gleaners, we've also got like they call them the little blue pantries that are all around the
Hmm.
county that we
Yeah.
fill up with food. And then me and my neighbor, so like I mentioned, I live in an apartment complex, right? So like we don't have a yard where we can plant a garden, but we actually we think we are going to be able to finagle our community management to let us have like a raised bed like community garden situation. Cause one of my really good, I know I was like, one of my really good friends and neighbors has like a patio garden. She just picked a 10-pound watermelon from this patio garden. Yeah, she has
Yeah.
watermelon, she has cantaloupe, she has like squash, zucchini, and then we've got like strawberries and some herbs and some stuff on ours that's like not nearly to the scale. And I was like, we should literally get a little community garden going. And our maintenance guy is bought in. So I think we're going to be able to pull it off. I'm so excited
Oh,
about
that's
it.
beautiful. Well, touch base back with me later on if you want some tips on that, because I've
Yeah.
got like my approach to food justice and like organizing within all of this was, during the pandemic. I just started gardening because I didn't have much else to do. And I started going around. I was living in Oakland at the time, and I started going around and finding, like heat treated shipping containers. Don't use the chemically treated ones that will leach into your vegetables and give you cancer. By the way,
Important
heat.
disclaimer.
Yeah, important disclaimer. Look online. There's a guide for how to tell what symbols mean what, and look for the heat treated ones. Those are the ones that you can use that are safe for vegetables. Um, like rebuilding shipping pallets into containers to line the walkway to my tiny little Oakland apartment so that I could grow squash and zucchini and tomatoes and rosemary and basil and cilantro and three different kinds of peppers and cucumbers. Did I say those already? And garlic and onions and bush beans and pole beans and all of this in like a plot that would fit in the back of a pickup truck bed.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
little rows of containers. So if I can do that in the middle of like, I'm going to borrow some Oaklandese here. I got hella lucky with this apartment that I was living in. It was absolutely golden handcuffs in one of the most gentrified, nicest parts of Oakland with like great access to public transit. So that was just so perfect. But if I can do this in like one of the most urban parts of Oakland, California, then anybody can grow a garden anywhere. And that kind of led me to like start poking around at just like a revitalization of the Victory Garden project that fed everybody during World War II. Because nobody grows their own food anymore. And so that's kind of the center of my organizing and my activism. And that's kind of like how I relate to what's going on with the project that I'm working on in McDowell County, West Virginia. And with my work with like the LEAP work and like everything that I do, like you asked about like organizing within the restaurant community in Roanoke. And one of the things that I've been doing is just like going to the different bars and restaurants that I like to hang out in with seed starts.
Yeah.
That I have
That's
extra.
awesome.
That I don't have room to get in the ground. Like, hey, do you want this baby cucumber plant? And people are always like, fuck yeah, I want a baby cucumber plant.
Love that.
So and that's kind of like a way to form, affinity groups and get organized.
So true. Absolutely. A lot of organizing is actually like social connection in so many ways. And as you're talking about like gardening in an urban area, it was bringing to mind, have you heard of the Poor Proles Almanac?
Absolutely. They're one of my favorite
They're
Instagram
so
accounts.
fucking great. And I was just thinking about that because they're like, plant wild seeds that are native, like in urban areas, like who cares?
Yeah.
And funnily enough,
they've got all these memes about like Paw Mafia.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Kentucky coffee beans and all this stuff. And because I started following them, so I was walking my dog through the complex the other day, and I noticed this tree that had these weird little funky spiky berries on it. And it's like part of our landscaping. And I was like, I'm just gonna search this with my little Google Lens camera real quick. And it's a Coosa dogwood tree, which is apparently edible. But it's just, they've got, it tastes like a persimmon apparently, and it's got heavy seeds in it. And so you have to like, most people like peel it, and it's kind of like labor intensive. But I was like, well, damn, like I could still forage this and like make some stuff. And the only reason I even thought about that was because of Poor Proles Almanac and all of their
and about grafting that onto ornamental dogwood trees in the public park 5 feet away from
exactly. Well, and it's also like, did they even know that when because the last thing that the landlord wants you to do is be able to eat off the land for free. So it's like, I know they didn't intentionally plant those trees knowing that they were edible.
It boggles my mind that we still refer to people within this system as landlords, and motherfuckers can't connect the dots.
Oh my gosh, language, man. It's like it tells the story for us for sure.
So I've gotten my hand here. I picked it up out of my car seat. I was going to give it to the chef at the restaurant that I work at, but she wasn't there. All of this came from my garden.
Yum. Is that okra?
These are dilly beans with chili and garlic and dill and a little bit of broccoli to kind of fill it out a little bit. So they're spicy dilly beans. And in a world that commodifies everything we do, this shit is a revolutionary act.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
And then past that, giving it to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I made this here, and like, people would be like, can I pay you? Like, no,
just take it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know that I'm ever going to do like podcast episodes that are like pay to list. Like I have a Ko-Fi where people can support the pod because it does cost money to produce it. Like I pay to literally distribute it, like on the streaming services and stuff. But like, I don't think I'm ever going to do like episodes that are like bonus episodes where like you have to be paying subscriber. Cause I'm like, the point of the podcast is to get information into the hands of the people, right? Like if you have to pay to access it, it like undermines the entire point. So
like means testing.
Say what?
Kind of like means testing.
I don't know if
no, never mind. That's not relevant.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not relevant.
But going back to what you're saying about giving it to people, that was part of like what we with our community garden here. We were like, what if we just knew what each other were growing, we could plan around that. And then I could give you some of what I'm growing, you could give me some of what you're growing, and we can have a whole shebang.
That sounds like communism to me.
Oh, I know we can't have that around here. You're gonna chase us out of my home.
Yeah. Just don't call it that.
Exactly. Just a community garden.
Yeah.
So did you tell us about McDowell County? Is that connected to your work with LEAP, or is that a different project that you're working on?
It's an altogether different project. And maybe eventually like that project could become involved with LEAP, but it's got a lot of work to do before it's ready for that. We are basically in like the forming a planning committee and writing a business plan and doing land acquisition phase right now. So the main thing that we're looking for is just people to talk to in McDowell County, West Virginia. So if there was anyone listening to this conversation right now in McDowell County, who wants to get involved in starting what's basically gonna be like a commune, a co-op, to do sustainable timber harvesting and timber credits, just to find revenue, and kind of build permaculture guilds around the areas that we are harvesting in, and do some organic farming, and just kind of work the land and be an example, and within the framework of that, build community and like help people in the area just find self-reliance. Like, we understand as Appalachians just from other parts of the region that nobody needs a savior. Like, nobody needs me to come in from the big city, Roanoke, Virginia, to like save them and show them how to do anything. But what people do need is just the tools to do what they want to do and the connections. And a lot of these hollers used to be entirely self-reliant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the coal barons came in and destroyed these communities. And it was a slow death. Like you were talking about being a little kid and having cousins sleeping on your couch and everything. And like, that's the same kind of like radical self-reliance that I kind of want to try and foster, but that we want to try and foster, but also recognizing that the community needs to be more than just the holler, because there's not enough people in the holler to sustain anymore. So these small towns need to start reaching out to each other, like kind of you guys are doing in these areas, in your area, and building community like across the ridges between areas that have kind of traditionally, feuded with each other, and recognizing that these feuds are artificial because your town was a Pinkerton town and my town was loyal to Sid Hatfield. So we've hated each other for 110 years now. And so within that, we've got a couple of different people involved. I guess the main other person that I've been talking with is a guy named Jonah. And he's like a big time hardcore wobbly IWW organizer.
We love it.
He's a great dude. And I'm really excited to be working with him because he's got a lot of cool ideas, and he's kind of like he's very dour and serious and like soft spoken. So he and I make a good like odd couple when it comes to going out and talking to people, which is basically what we're doing right now. Is we're kind of trying to do like town halls, and recruit and figure out what people's needs are and figure out how to best like write a good business plan so that we can get some good funding and start a spot up. And so the two angles that we're going as far as what we're trying to do is we're either trying to find either acreage or form a coalition of community members who are willing to like band together and I guess call it a syndic or a co-op to like say like, hey, we have X amount of timber credits that we can sell to your paper mill to offset the nasty, horrible things that you're doing so that we as a neoliberal capitalist society can feel better about the ways that we're destroying the planet. But also we're communists, so give us money. Like in a way that, like, when I say that, I mean use the tools capitalism provides to make plans to dismantle it. You know, like timber credits don't solve anything, but they are a way for a group of people to establish a revenue stream so that they can then use their organization to do other things. And then also with that network, teach and help people with resources to have their own like farmland, their own garden plots, their own, you know, like Betty's really good with chickens and Steve knows how to treat the cows and you know, Paul grows the best tomatoes and Steve knows how to grow tomatoes, but his soil super sucks. So he can go help Paul and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And kind of use this as a means to kind of start to build coalitions with people. And that's just, you know, an initial idea. We might wind up doing something completely different, like finding an old coffee shop and starting a free store within the coffee shop and kind of having a pay what you can afford model and getting donations and grants and running it as a nonprofit and acting as like kind of the food aggregators that I was talking about with LEAP and ASD, and being a processing facility and selling processed food to local schools and employing people in substance abuse recovery and employing people who like are just getting out of prison, which is something that we're going to do no matter what. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's in the very beginning phase, and I rambled a lot about it.
It's in the visioning phase. I love that.
The visioning phase.
And I love that, like, you just illustrated though, as you were, and I appreciate the rambles. I have people on the show so that I'm not the only one rambling. So, but what I appreciate what you said as you were talking, like you illustrated many different types of examples of how people could start an initiative around something like an empty storefront that they could turn into a free store, or land that they are inheriting that they don't know what to do with, or whatever. And I actually had a couple of thoughts. One was around your need to talk to people, which is very, very real. And my background is the vast majority of it is in talking to people. That's what I do in community organizing. And if you, we should jam like off the show, off air, around potentially even doing like a community listening survey type thing. That's like a door-to-door style survey, where you could target households like in areas where there is like a larger kind of open land that you could explore. And then the other thing that I wanted to share is there is a very similar project in Western North Carolina called Cooperate WNC. I'll send you the link. And Zev, the founder, and I don't know what kind of leadership, if they call him a director, like what you know model they use, but it is a co-op, and it is, I think he might have a lot of insight on like the funding side of things and how they got started and what their model is and any tips and tricks, and would love to make that connection, because this is exactly, I'm like, when we part of the tools of the state is like, if we get so hyper focused on the national like politics and the people who are in positions of power who should be doing the right thing and yada, 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 then we lose sight of all of the ways in which we have power that we can be using right now to actually create the world that we want to live in, instead of just demanding that somebody who clearly has no moral clarity, waiting for them to create the world in which we can all thrive. And this is exactly just such a strong model of that. And I want to see this everywhere, all over Appalachia and beyond, because this is how
nobody is coming to save us.
Exactly.
We have to do it ourselves.
Yes. And that you said something about like, you can't educate people, like you can't help people. And there's actually like an Aboriginal Australian quote, and I don't want to misstate the name, so I'm not gonna say anything, but folks can look it up. But it's along the lines of like, if you are here to help me, then you're wasting your time. And if you're here because your liberation is tied to mine, then we can work together, is the quote.
Precisely.
And exactly.
Precisely. And that's exactly it. Like, liberation is intersectional, and that includes the conservatives. Because the conservative rank and file is like, they're largely indoctrinated. And you kind of touched upon that in a previous episode when you were talking about your conversation with the gentleman out front of the convenience store or whatever. Where, like, as long as you don't use the no words, everybody agrees that we need to build socialism. Just don't call it that.
Yeah.
Except for the people who are benefiting from, like, exploitation.
Exactly.
Like, and I gotta dig through my meme folder to find it. But there's a I think it's a variation on the Aboriginal quote that you just. I'm not even gonna bother with this ADHD mess in here. The quote that I'm thinking of, I'm gonna paraphrase it, is basically, if your ideas of liberation only benefit yourself, then it's not liberation at all, because liberation is intersectional and liberation is collective.
Yeah.
So, like, that's like the pit that a lot of conservative-minded people fall into, is this indoctrinated idea of, like, Protestant work ethic and individualism and the god-awful corruption of the word libertarian that is these, like, Rand Paul, Ayn Rand, free marketeer idealists that are now calling themselves libertarians.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's just a mask for their own, like, anarcho-capitalist illusions of grandeur.
Yes.
And if it seems like I'm fired up about them, it's because I actually think that those people are the biggest enemies of progress. And it's interesting to observe the ways in which libertarianism and neoliberalism tend toward these, like, neo-fascist corporatist philosophies and ideologies as a way to protect the status quo and their own privilege within it. So I actually, like, they say, like, don't engage with trolls on the internet. But I actually do engage, like, I find those people specifically and, like, try to challenge those narratives in, like, public spaces, because those are the narratives that are actually, in my opinion, the most dangerous, because those are the narratives that are actually served by the trans misogyny and the COVID conspiracies and the doomerism and the racism and everything like that. Like, it kind of ties into the idea that there's no war but class war. And so any culture war that we're fighting is actually artificial as a means to distract people.
Exactly.
And so, like, these free market, they, for the most part, only want a free market if it benefits them. People those are the enemies of the class war. So those are the people that we should actually like focus on countering their narratives by any means possible.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as much as trolling people on the internet is a waste of time, there's also an aspect of like, these people are saying dangerous things, so it is actually worth engaging with them, as long as you're doing it on your terms and not letting them like sucker you into bad faith debate.
Yeah, well, and to like steal you off the path of moral clarity too, right? Like, I think what I really appreciate the word that you used is narrative, because there is just as much a narrative war as there is a like organizing and building the people's, like building the mass power war, right? Like the narrative war is used to prevent us from building the people power on the other side of the war.
Exactly.
And like, if we don't counter and challenge these narratives openly, then we are letting them grow. And that it like, that's one thing that's so frustrating to me, especially in like, I mean, I know the elections are never going to save us anyways, but when I was working for the Democratic Party and they straight up just decided not to knock on doors in my community because it wasn't worth their time. It's like, well, the fucking alt-right is organizing in my community. Right. So if you're not knocking on doors, like, who's going to counter their message? And that's kind of exactly what you're saying, is like, we have to also do the same. If we aren't actively countering the message, we don't have to engage, right? Like, we don't have to take the bait, but we can say, this is fucking wrong, and here is why.
We can engage on our terms. Like, exactly. we should engage, and we should, you know, have the cursory conversation publicly, just to have an opportunity to refute the narratives, but recognize that they're always going to spin off into bullshit that serves their own purpose. And when they start to do that, like when you start to lose the narrative, when you start to get frustrated, like when you start to find yourself explaining empathy, the concept of having empathy to a motherfucker, like that's when you need to either disengage or shift over to just like, you know, saying things like, haha, this is why nobody takes libertarians seriously, and then copy paste a link to some psychology blog, 5 steps to learn empathy.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, this is,
and like flip their script too. I'm sorry to interrupt, but flip their script and know that these people are on some bad faith bullshit. So turn their need to hijack your platform into like, you basically chain them to that need for the purposes of mocking and frustrating them. If that makes sense. And a good resource for kind of sussing out these narratives is but there is, and you can turn the mic back on here, there's a really good channel on YouTube run by a guy named Ian Danskin, who does a series called The Alt-Right Playbook. And I highly encourage everybody to watch that series if you want to like kind of get a better handle of the way that these people perpetuate bad narratives using social media as part of that narrative war and cultural war that we were touching on. Because if you can see what's going on, it's a whole, like, you can't identify a problem if you can't see it, and you can't fix a problem if you can't identify it. And that touches back on the diseducation that you were talking about, where like people are indoctrinated against the very idea of collectivism.
Yes.
Through talking points about, like, you know, it's a revitalization of the cultural Bolshevikism that the Nazis used to kind of start their whole cultural war shit. Yes. Like, they literally call it cultural Marxism.
Exactly.
And so, like, if you're indoctrinated against the very idea of collectivism, you're never going to pick up like a book or a shovel or a gun against the system. So
I also, this like for me brings up the social work background, gonna bring it into the conversation, which is that motivational interviewing. I think I've talked about this like intervention practice a couple times, and there's actually in motivational interviewing, part of like the process is as you're like asking questions of the person that you're talking with, etc., you're trying to identify kind of where they fall on a scale of like 1 to 5, where 1 is it's like a pre-contemplation, I think is what the word that they use for it. But it's essentially like the idea that they are just not ready. Like they're not there. They're not ready to like be motivated, right? Like they're just not, they haven't gotten to that place. And then two, it's like it moves them through the scale of being like, then they're in a place where they're like considering it and they're like, this information isn't as new to me. And now I'm ready to like actually think about how I am connected to this info. And then they move to like thinking about how they can act. And then they move to actually planning an action. And so I just think that like, that's exactly what you're saying is like, if someone is so rooted, like if they are just not there yet, then we like, one, we can't let the harm continue, right? But also we can't engage with them in the same way that we would engage with someone who is ready, who is farther down on that scale. And you muted yourself, by the way. Zoom classics, so no worries.
I'm back. It's funny that you mentioned that because what did you call that strategy?
So it's a social work intervention practice, and it's called motivational interviewing, and it comes out of social work settings that are typically like court mandated or where someone did not opt in, basically.
Okay. So I've been doing that on accident, just like engaging in what amounts to counter propaganda and agitprop and culture jamming on social media. I've just kind of accidentally started doing that where like I engage people in conversation with the intention of like sussing out the level of cultural indoctrination that they're suffering under relative to our capitalist system. Because like when I first found that alt-right playbook series, I was already starting to like be, pretty far left. And I very quickly recognized the addictive nature of right-wing propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
it's
so
literally a trauma. It's like you get in a trauma loop. That's what it is.
We need to have a trauma-informed response to like basically
speaking my language.
People.
Yes.
And so I don't want to like. And so I joke about this with my leftist friends, but I'm going to come out and say it on air. This is why gulags.
Yep.
But
exactly.
like, don't send people up and like, don't have the gulags in Siberia this time.
Yeah.
And maybe make them a little bit nicer and maybe like have a trauma-informed response where we actually care about people instead of saying, oh, off to gulag with you. Like maybe that's where Stalin got it wrong.
Yeah, maybe we do actually have like legitimate rehabilitation facilities where people are able to find reconnection with themselves and each other and the community around them. Yeah.
Yeah, and also we can do that within a community, like have the facilities be so. Oh Lord, I'm gonna keep talking to you forever, but I gotta go.
I know you have to go. I won't hold you over. I'm gonna message you on Instagram, share a couple things with you. But before we hop, is there anything that you wish you would have shared with the folks listening, or anything that we can do to support your work?
You all listening can best support my work by doing your work too.
Yes.
If that makes any sense at all. Like get out there and find an affinity group, find a cause that you care about, do something. Even if you are not powerless against this system. That is a fucking lie. I don't care if you are going and stealing. I'm not going to use that word. I don't care if you are going and getting shipping label paper from Staples and printing anti-capitalist memes on it and slapping them up on porta potties at your local farmer's market.
Yes.
I don't care if you are arguing with some forced birther conservative Karen in the comment section of your local Facebook news. Like, do something. Yes. Do not let doomerism win. Go grow a garden. Organize against fascism, organize against your communities. If you're prepared for a climate apocalypse by buying guns and stockpiling MREs, you're doing it wrong and you're nothing but a supply drop.
Yes.
Get to know your community.
That wraps up today's episode of Rednecks Rising. Thanks for listening and for all of your support. Please don't forget to reach out if you or a friend would like to be interviewed on the show. Also, don't forget to enter the giveaway before Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if there was anything that Joey talked about that really tickled your fancy, I will drop quite a few resources in the show notes for today. I'll also drop our link tree, which you will be able to find on that tree, our Ko-Fi, our social media pages, and some other fun stuff. And Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next week. But before we go, we gotta know, what's the answer to today's trivia question?
So our question for today was, who was the famous person who founded the original trail through the Cumberland Gap? The answer is Daniel Boone. It is said that he established it in 1775.
Okay, why did I think it was Davy Crockett, though? Is Davy Crockett real? Am I going to get my Appalachian card revoked for this? Well, on that note, I'll see y'all later. Take care.